Before 9 a.m. this morning, more than 56.6 million students will recite these words: one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And justice for all, education as a civil right, is the designated theme for the conference this morning. In a very candid interview, CNN journalist Soledad O'Brien stated that access to a quality education will become the greatest civil rights issue of modern times. These simple truths are self-evident, and they are that one, all students deserve to have a great teacher in every classroom and in the school that they attend. And number two, all students deserve to go to school in an environment where they can maximize their greatest potential. In short, I'm making the case that we must have great schools and that every student deserves the right to a high-quality education. Now, folks, there are laws all over Tennessee that govern and protect these rights and the rights of students that prevent discriminatory practices. Discrimination happens based on race, religion, creed, and also based upon national origin. But what I've noticed is there are no laws in the books that address a common educational malpractice, the one that we call ability bias. And what I mean by ability bias is that sometimes there's often a shroud of low expectations that happens across the country in schools, where kids are working way below their ability level and way below grade level. And this is a new type of discrimination that's been happening for a very long time, and it's something we need to think about. We have to believe that kids have the aptitude to be successful. We have to believe that they can do it. We have to provide that push. Nationally, this practice manifests itself in low expectations, and we see it happen in the way that kids are selected for advanced courses. We see it in the way that kids are selected for scholarship opportunities, and we also see it in the way that kids are selected for other opportunities. Individuals who are not required to think critically will never fight for what they believe, they'll never fight for what they deserve, and they will never ever fight for their human rights. Thus, as leaders this morning, it is imperative for us to make sure that we teach students to self-advocate, and also that we help them to challenge the status quo, even if that status quo goes against the grain of what we traditionally believe.
When they express themselves about the issues that affect their lives, when they're the ones who speak up, and when we enable that and promote that, yes, they want to come to school. As it turns out, graduation from high school is the healthiest thing that a teenager can do. So we want to make school a place where kids want to be. I think some really good things having to do with how schools are dealing with the whole person. School districts, statewide school districts, thinking about, wanting school to be a place where students feel safe and respected. I mean, if you have these adverse childhood experiences, which is, poverty, lead in your water, stress, abuse at home, and we know what prevents abuse. I learned in nursing school, it's preschool. Preschool and early childhood education. It's the biggest, most effective intervention for preventing child abuse.
And I would have to say that under the umbrella of almost every item that you could consider on your radar screen would be the issues of what's the culture and what's the climate like in your building. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's well defined, and you can simplify the issue of culture and climate into a couple of statements, really. That school culture is simply how you really do things in the building. It isn't your mission statement. You can put the mission statement up on a wall. Nobody can read it. School culture is the values, the beliefs, and how you really do things. And secondly, school climate is simply nothing more than how it really feels in the building. And y'all all know this. The person who makes the greatest difference in how it feels in a building is who greets you when you walk in the front door. Isn't that right? Okay. I mean, you know really quickly whether you're in a welcoming or an unwelcoming place. And I think for many parents today who didn't have the greatest experience with public education, that the welcoming climate is really significant. Because if it did not feel warm and inviting to you, then you're going to have some issues about how you think your children might do there. And so I think welcoming school climate culture is really important.
Social issues, what we see, and I think what you need to be looking at as administrators and teachers, is the experience of students, a lack of experience interacting with people that are different from them. Not only in terms of race and ethnicity and gender and all of the issues that we heard earlier, but also in terms of thought. That it is okay for your classmate to have a different idea or position or feeling about an issue. And it's okay for you to say how you feel without it becoming confrontational.
And the challenge that we have in our work, and you have in yours, is distinguishing between when a consequence should be given and how to use restorative practices as a part of the equation to reduce the disparities in particularly young men, African American men and women, and Latinos who are being suspended at 3 to 7 times, depending upon which study you use, 3 to 7 times greater risk, a greater height. And I think one of the things that schools, and we see this all the time, is SEL, social emotional learning, or social emotional competence, is not like a separate subject. Does that make sense, y'all? It's how we just do life, okay? As it said in Beck's quote, in teaching, you cannot do the Bloom stuff until you do the Maslow stuff, okay? The last part, consequences, are very simply 4 questions for kids to reflect on. What'd you do? What was harmful about it to someone else? What were you after when you harmed someone? And last but not least, what are we going to do the next time around the block so that this doesn't happen again? That should be a part of every consequence that goes on with young people so that there's a reflection component, not just a punishment. Because it's not about punishment, it's about restoring relationships where harm has occurred.
There's a concept called suspension of disbelief. How many of you have heard of that? Suspension of disbelief. Teaching our kids and our colleagues how to be accepting of some of the most, not accepting, but taking away the, I don't believe that's the most stupidest thing you have ever said in the world. You know it is. But that does not put you in a position of having that conversation that will help that student or that colleague to really address the real problem. We have to teach our students to take I can't out of their vocabulary. To take the I can't out of their vocabulary. And part of our job is to help them develop that confidence and providing that positive reinforcement. And even when they do something wrong or something quite stupid, we remember suspension of disbelief, find a positive, use that as a teaching moment, as opposed to focusing on what that student did wrong.
Young men and women desperately need connection. One of the core issues for kids' confidence and young men and women's confidence is the fact that they are connected to some caring leadership and adults in their lives who they know will be there no matter what. Had at least one person in their life who said, I love you and it doesn't matter what you've done. Okay? I will love you no matter what. That's connection.